to another episode of This Happened Here. On this channel, I take you with me in search of true stories that have happened here in the US and anywhere else in the world that I feel like visiting in search of interesting things to share with you. In this episode, we search for the Elkmont Ghost Town, the Troll Bridge, which we missed, but here is a photo, the House of the Fairies, and Noah Bud Ogle Farm. This video is going to be packed with a lot of information because not only are we going to see these amazing century-old structures deep in the woods, but I'm also taking you with me to areas close to where 4 hikers have just disappeared without a trace in the Smoky Mountains, and they have never been found. These are very sad tales, so viewer discretion is advised. I just hope this is not going to be footage of me going missing here, but on that note, I want to stop here and say this. Never go hiking without informing a group of people of where you're going and when you'll be back. I say a group of people because telling only one person may not be enough. That person could forget what you told them, or authorities may not be able to locate that person if they need to, or that person whom you told may just want to be malicious and not cooperate with the authorities on your behalf. Always bring more than enough supplies to last you for days, longer than the time you need to stay, just in case you have an accidentally extended stay. Always find a way to check in with the rangers and let them know where you plan to hike. Get a map. Most self-service does not work in the mountains if you are keeping a track of the map on your phone. We have personally seen that happen. Try not to hike alone. Get someone you trust to go along with you. Research and carry the right supplies for the area that you're going to hike in. And last, but there are so much more, but stay on trail. A lot of folks go missing because they veer off the trail. For those hiking in the Smoky Mountain, the park ranger number is 865-436-1230. Always try to get the number of the park ranger station where you're hiking. And if you can memorize that number, do so. That will be even better than keeping it on a piece of paper or something. Now, as we ventured into parts of the Smoky, not where these people were actually taken, I am both scared and at peace because I know there are dangerous things in these woods. But looking at the rivers and the foliage in these mountains are so beautiful, and it just makes you feel at peace. Now, I don't know if you get a sense of who I am from my voice and accent, but I hope you can get why I didn't stay long in these woods or go in that far, and you can bet I was not alone. The second major contributor to this channel was with me. And with that, I would like to send a shout out to CB. CB is the one, with the help of Snow, whom I introduced to you in the last video, is the person who makes this all really possible. He is the one who built Snow into the great RV she is. He's the travel guide, the researcher, and the boot to my butt. So I want to say publicly, thank you, sir, for all you do. I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Now back to the video. I wanted to hike in the mountain because I wanted to get you this footage of the area near where these people went missing, so you can get a picture in your mind of what the area looks like. Also, I wanted to show you some cool spots we found there. I will tell you a bit about these areas when we get there. So get ready to drive and walk with us into the Smoky Mountain while I tell you the true story of the disappearances of 6-year-old Dennis Martin in 1969, 16-year-old Theresa Trenny Gibson in 1976, 58-year-old Polly Melton in 1981, 24-year-old Derrick Lewking in 2012, and 53-year-old Susan Clement on October 2nd, 2018. All this in the episode of This Happened Here. I am your host, LT Barteck. Now, this is not to scare you into not venturing out and enjoying the great outdoors. It did not stop us, and the likelihood of you sticking to the rules and going missing is very slim. Because in 2020, Laurel Falls, a falls located in the Smoky and an area that we have passed many times, has been visited 375,000 times. It was reported that 11.3 million people visited the 500,000 acres of Smoky Mountain last year. But be careful, because even though there are not a lot of tragedies, park rangers have reported that every year they get about 100 calls for search and rescue. This is mostly in the fall when visitors hike to look at the fall colors. The most common death in the Smoky is from car accidents and heart attacks. Also, only one person has died from a bear attack on the Great Smoky Mountain. She was an elementary school teacher by the name of Glenda Ann Bradley. It is a very sad tale. Glenda had taken the Little River Trail in the Smoky. She was hiking with her ex-husband. They were both experienced hikers and were not afraid to go off and do their own thing. Her ex-husband wanted to fish, but Glenda decided that while he did that, she was going to continue on the trail. An hour later, her ex-husband gave up on fishing and started back on the trail. But what he saw would haunt him for the rest of his life, because on the ground in front of him on the trail was Glenda. She was being mauled by a mother bear and her yearling cub. She died on the spot. If you want to read more about it, I will link the news article in the description. Based on what I've experienced on these mountain trails, things can happen in an instant. My knee tells that story. We went hiking in winter, and I slipped on the ice coming off the Trillium Gap Trail in the Great Smoky Mountain. We had gone to look at the Grotto Falls, and I skidded on the ice by the cliff almost 3,777 feet above sea level, bending my knee in a position that it should not be bent in, and then had to hike 4 miles down the mountain with a bum knee. So please be careful and wear the correct gear. I didn't. On to the story. Dennis Martin, a delightful little dark-haired, brown-eyed boy, was in a group made up of Clyde Martin, his grandfather, William Martin, his father, and his brother Douglas Martin. They had decided to head to Kate's Cove on a bro trip in celebration of Father's Day. The plan was to hike from Kate's Cove to Russell Fields. They camped for the night. Then the next day they packed up and headed further to Spence Field and camped there. Spence Field is a part of the Appalachian Trail in the Smoky Mountains. While there, they met another family by the same surname, Martin. They soon became friends, and while the adults were hanging out, the kids started sneaking around and popping out of bushes or behind trees to scare the adults. Out of the corner of William's eye, he was keeping track of his kids while they played. He watched as Dennis ran and hid behind a bush. That was the last time he would ever see his son. William waited, watching to see if his son would pop out from behind the bush, but when all the other kids came to sit with the adults, Dennis never came. William called out to him to come and join them, but there was no response. He walked over to the bush as silently as he could to scare Dennis instead, but as soon as he could see around the bush, he saw that Dennis wasn't there. He asked everyone at the campsite if they had seen where Dennis had run off to, but no one did. He spent a few hours calling out to Dennis and combing the woods, but still there was no sign of him. After a while, having no luck on their own, Clyde, Dennis's grandfather, hiked out to the ranger station, but it was raining so hard it was tough going for a while. Soon, Clyde, along with the help of rangers, started one of the biggest manhunts in the history of the Smoky. 1,400 volunteers combed the 56 square miles looking for Dennis, but he was never found. Years later, an illegal ginseng hunter found a sock, a shoe, and the skeleton of a small boy. It was not said if the skeleton was Dennis or not. But if it wasn't, the question is, what was the skeleton of another boy doing there? Theresa Lynn Gibson, a.k.a. Trenny, was an active 5 feet 3 inches, 115-pound girl with long, soft, curly brown hair which matched her brown eyes. Her high school, Bearden High School in Knoxville, Tennessee, had planned a trip to hike Clingman's Dome to Andrews Bald. She was excited about this trip and had no problem getting her parents to sign off on this because of her excitement. The morning of the trip came and she dressed in her brown plaid jacket, blue jeans, and Adidas shoes. Her parents dropped her off at the school where 40 other students and one chaperone would be getting on the bus which would take them to the nearest pull-off at the head of the trail. Upon returning from the hike, the chaperone counted off the students but found that one was missing. It was Trenny, and she would stay missing until this day. The chaperone asked if anyone had seen Trenny, and a group who was behind her said they saw her bent over at one point and there right going off the trail. The search and rescue team was called, but the only thing that they found out of place was a can of beer and 3 cigarette butts where they had seen her veer off the trail. It is believed she was abducted, but that has not been confirmed. 58-year-old Polly Melton, a.k.a. Polly, finished putting the last ingredients into her bubbling pot of spaghetti and glanced over at the small mirror attached to the wall of their Airstream, where she had located it to match her height. She was a tall woman and has been described as matronly. She looked to make sure her gray hair, which was in tight curls, was in place. She then pushed her glasses up her nose, which had slid down a little while she was cooking. It was a little hot in the Airstream. Then she looked down at her pink and white blouse just to make sure she had not stained it with the sauce, and then at her tan slacks. All was well, and she walked out to meet her travel buddies Red and Trula, who were waiting for her to do their daily walk down the trail. Polly was working on losing a few pounds, so when Red and Trula decided to move a little slower, Polly picked up the pace, having decided to move ahead and get her steps in. She had gone way ahead and was about to be out of sight when the ladies called out to her. Looking back and seeing how far they were, Polly stopped and laughed at how far ahead she had gone and how fast she was moving. Then she turned the bend and was out of sight. The ladies completed the walk, expecting Polly to meet them back at the campsite and to give them grief for how slow they were, but they never saw her again. Polly never made it back to the campground. She never got a chance to eat her spaghetti, and she was never found. Derrick Lewking, born in 2012, was now 24 years old. He celebrated life. He even had life tattooed in Japanese character on his chest. He longed to be in the great outdoors just like all the survivalists he had been watching on TV. So he went and did some shopping. He bought a map, a Gerber axe, a military survival manual, a knife sharpener, paracord lamp, and a bunch of other things that he would need to survive for some time in the woods. But he never came back from the woods. After being missing, his loved ones contacted the authorities, and in their search, they found Derrick's white Ford Escape parked at Newfound Gap. Most of the supplies he had bought were still in the car, even his tent and sleeping bag. But what was most disturbing was a note left by presumably Derrick, which read, "Don't follow me." It is unclear what happened to Derrick, but his family still hopes that one day he would return to them. I hope so too. Now, in this story, they did find the missing person, but the find was not a happy one. On September 25, 2018, Ohioan Susan Clement, aka Susie, arrived at the Smokies. She planned to hike to Clingman's Dome with her 20-year-old daughter, but at the head of Andrews Ball Trail, her daughter, who was more excited to get there and wanted to move faster, decided to separate and meet her back at the parking lot later. Hours passed and Susie's daughter waited for her to return, but as it got darker and with no sign of her mother, she decided to call in search and rescue. Soon the search was on for Susie. 7 days later, they found her body. It was not said how she died, but I'm sure her family will feel her loss forever. Now, as I reflect on these stories, I just want to say that my heart goes out to the families of these missing persons. Now onto these amazing finds. Elkmont Ghost Town. In the early part of 1900s, Elkmont was a bustling town made of rustic buildings using mostly natural materials. With the logging and mining industry there and tourists coming by train from around the country to picnic and stay for a day or extended period due to these natural surroundings, no wonder this was the place to be. You probably can't see it, but this town was once the second largest town in the county. It had a hotel, school, post office, store where people could shop for groceries, a church, and as you can see by the footprint, large homes for that era. The people that lived here were made up of construction workers, pharmacists, lawyers, and mechanics, among others. In 1934, the government decided to create parks around the U.S., and the Smoky was one such park. That included the area of Elkmont. They had to decide if they wanted to sell their homes or stay. If they stayed, the government would buy the home and allow them to live there until they passed. Most did, and now these structures just stand there as memories of that past. The Troll Bridge was built as part of the town, the Elkmont town, and was there to facilitate crossing the river to the other side. House of the Fairy. Though I made it look ominous in the beginning, it is just a spring house. It is a little off the trail of Twin Creek. As you can see, it is covered in moss, which makes it look like it is something out of a children's storybook and one where fairies might appear at any time. Noah Bud Ogle Farm. Bud lived on this farm from 1883 to 1925. He was one of the first white settlers in the Smoky. To build his home, he had to chop down century-old magnolias and rhododendron and cutting into the mountains. They used to call this place Jungle Brook. We walked through the house that Bud built and over to what we assume was his barn. Then we went for no apparent reason further into the woods, but we made it out alive. I hope you found something interesting in this video. It was fun for us being outside, and we did get our steps in, so that was good. Okay, now that we have come to the end of the prior heartbreaking stories, I can't say I hope you enjoyed it. But just use this as a reminder to be careful when hiking or going out into the woods. It is more dangerous than you think. Now, if traveling around the US and any other country I get a fancy for is something that you like and want to travel with me, please hit the subscribe button and select all so that you don't miss any of my weekly uploads. And if you like my efforts in going out there to bring you these stories, please click the like button and go ahead and share this channel if you think someone else would find it interesting. I can't leave without thanking all of my subscribers and those who gave me a like for the last set of videos, especially for the trip to Jamaica. Thank you so much. I am balled over. I am so appreciative. So thank you again from the bottom of my heart. Now please take care of yourself and I'll catch you on the next one. Goodbye. Love you.